Okay. Awesome. Thank you, Aaron. Great. And welcome, everybody. Thank you, Jane. This is Career Lab Wednesday. We are here every Wednesday, noon to 1 p.m. Central Time. My job is to support you in your career, whether that's maybe answering some questions or pointing you in the direction that's helpful or helping you think things through. The way that I look at a career and career development is it helping you become the person that you can be? Is the job that you have or the career path that you want, is that helping you develop the skills that you want? And I especially lean heavily on social and emotional intelligence. That's my expertise. And that plays out in a lot of ways throughout one's career. So there's a few ways that you can engage in this. You can jump in on Zoom. I love it when you do that. I can talk to you one-to-one that way. If you can't do that, you can always type questions into the comment section on LinkedIn Live or on YouTube, and Jane will get those over to me, and I'll do the best I can to answer and address those questions. So another point I want to make is that you don't have to have a question that it has to do with the topic. Anything career related is on the table. No question too small, no question too big. People join in wanting help with resume and interviewing skills. People jump in wanting help with, what do I do later on in my career? I could retire. I could start my own business. What would be really meaningful to me? So there's all kinds of questions, a whole range of things available to you. So it does not have to just do with the topic. That being said, we're looking at today's topic, which is next steps in your career. So there's a helpful thing in life overall and in just happiness, which is to look back at who was I, who am I now, and who am I becoming? And when I'm viewing myself that way, through that process of who I was, who am I now, who am I becoming, that gives me a sense of that I'm able to change my life in meaningful ways, that I have an impact. I'm able to have some control over who I'm becoming. So that's a satisfying thing. All kinds of studies on happiness show it's once you're above the poverty line, it's money will not make you any happier. Kids don't make you any happier. There's not some dream job out there that's going to make you any happier. Moving to another place isn't going to make you happier. Maybe for 6 months, it'll be fun and exciting, and then you'll go back to baseline. So what makes people happy, what keeps things interesting is learning and growing. And so that who was I, who am I now, and who am I becoming? So looking at next steps in a career, asking what are the gaps that I have? What are things that I'm just not good at? And are they things that I even care about and want to develop? Or are they things that, it would better serve me to say, this is not a strong suit of mine. I don't have that much intention of getting better at it. Here's what I am really good at, and these are the things I want to develop. So getting a sense of who I am, where I fit in the world, where I fit in with others is a part of, coming to terms with where I'm at now. So that's one thing to be considering is what are my skill gaps? What am I good at? What do I want to develop? And strengthening myself in any, there's a lot of classes, there's always continued education. Most of the time, what I find when people are reaching out for support in their career, sometimes it is just, I need help with my resume. I don't understand how to word things on there in a way that's going to get people looking at it. That's there are things that are just strictly technical. But most of the time in career development, relationships become increasingly important in how I communicate. And so the soft skills become really important. And so That's an area that I think we're looking at more and more. I think we're in what's that word? Zeitgeist. I think we're in a zeitgeist of personal development. Um, Sometimes I worry that maybe that's just because I'm in that, and so on social media and everybody I know, I just kind of live in that bubble. But I don't think so. I think that more and more people are paying attention to consciousness. What does it mean to be conscious? What does it mean to be in touch with my emotions? More guys, I mean, this big one for guys is, oh my gosh, I can feel hurt and afraid, and that's okay. I don't have to pretend like I'm not a human being or like I'm some kind of robot that can just handle anything. And that it's actually encouraged as a team to see my vulnerabilities sometimes. So I think we're in a zeitgeist of people recognizing the importance of soft skills or social and emotional intelligence. And so when looking at that in my team, if I'm working with other people, if I'm managing, if I'm on a team, is how do I interact with those around me? How can I do better of engaging with other people? Another study shows that when people are offering their deathbed regrets, one of the main things that they say is that they wish that the people in their life really knew how they felt about stuff. And that is consistent. That is a consistent theme that comes up of, geez, I mean, all levels of career success, of course, people are happy about what they did in their careers and or wish they had done more. That's all there. But one thing that is consistent is I wish my friends and family, I wish my colleagues, I wish the people in my life really knew how I felt about stuff. And I think that that's an interesting thing to bring in. So if I'm looking at who am I now, or who was I, who am I now in terms of how I interact and let people know about me and what I'm feeling, and who am I becoming? And then seeing how that would play into a career. What is it that I would want people to remember and say about me? How am I showing up that way now? And what's in the way of me having the meaningful connections that I could be having with people? So this is, I think more and more people are seeing how social and emotional intelligence overlays with career development and being able to work through challenging things, being able to, if I'm really engaged in meaningfully in my job, there's going to be a bunch of problems. We're going to be trying to figure things out. And usually it's going to go beyond just one person's brilliance. Even I just watched Oppenheimer last night. Absolutely devastating movie, that one of the saddest things I've seen in a while. And it struck me that one of the key gifts that Oppenheimer had was he knew he wasn't a great mathematician. He knew what his skills were and what his gaps were. And he was able to identify other great thinkers and bring them all together and rely on their talents and gifts and be pretty open about stuff that he didn't know and was uncomfortable with and all of that. And so that's a key thing in developing yourself in social and emotional intelligence and how that plays out into your career. So I've been talking for a while now, and as you can tell, this is something I'm very passionate about. But I would like to invite anybody who's joining in to ask any questions. What's on your heart? What questions do you have? Anything career related is open. Again, no question too small, no question too big. Many people have joined into Career Lab over the course of months as they're working on a project or working at leveling up in their career. So anything's on the table. career related, you can type your questions into the chat section or into the comment section if you're on LinkedIn, or you're welcome to come off mute and ask a question. So anything is on the table. Go ahead and ask. Aaron, checking in with you. Have you thought of anything that you are wanting to ask as I've been talking for a while?
Well, I guess I don't know if I have any. Where I am, I'm starting to work for myself.
Okay.
And like design and marketing and different things like that. And I joined Toastmasters so I could get more comfortable talking to people.
Good. Yeah.
But I definitely lack confidence. And it's interesting you talk about that movie and where he recognized where he didn't know things. And so recently, like I mentioned to a client, because they do more social media marketing, and I don't have experience like going out and trying to find more people to bring in. I can write content and post it and everything, but I don't know how to get new people in, and I'm not familiar with ads. So she ended up hiring somebody else.
Mm-hmm.
And which is okay. I want her to be successful, but at the same time, I don't want that to happen again. I know that's a skill that I want to develop. But yeah, so I'm kind of just like, it's kind of interesting. I'm like, oh, I'm a freelancer, but I'm like, and here, like, oh no, this is a career. And so kind of, I think I need to think about it differently.
Whoa. Okay. How so?
Take it more seriously, I guess. Like when you like freelance versus career, like career sounds more fancy, I guess.
Yeah.
Like I sound more, but like this is my career. Oh, I'm just like a freelancer. Like there's a certain
Okay.
amount of professionalism with you between the two different terms. I mean, at least to me.
It feels different when you say it, is what I'm
Yeah.
saying.
Or
So
even
then
like saying I'm an
have you,
entrepreneur or a business owner rather than I'm a freelancer.
mm-hmm. Okay, this is cool. So now if you're identifying, whoa, who I am currently is a freelancer. And I
Yeah,
notice when I'm saying this is what I'm doing in my career, I'm an entrepreneur, I'm a business owner, independent business owner, So
right.
then do you know what do you feel inside when you start saying that, when you refer to yourself that way?
I almost don't I don't I don't quite feel like that's me.
Mm-hmm.
Like, no, that's not you, Aaron.
Uh-huh.
Like, you're not that yet. You're just a freelancer. But I want to say, like, no, this is my career. I
Mm.
want to feel like that's me and come to with clients with more confidence and have a different image for myself and what I have to offer.
Beautiful, beautiful. Can we dig in a little here?
Uh, yes, please.
Okay, cool. And to name for anybody listening in, what I want you to be doing as you're listening in is learning vicariously. You want to be listening to the work that Aaron's doing, and even if you're not a business owner, even if you're not a former freelancer becoming business owner, you want to be applying this to wherever you're at in your job, in your career. So if you're working in a company, what I would say is there's a level of ownership that you could be taking on. So notice what Erin's doing is she's owning herself and her success differently in how she's talking about herself. So as you're listening into what we dig into here, be applying it to yourself. That's going to be the way that Erin and I can give you the most value. Okay, so Erin, back to you. So now when you talk about yourself as a entrepreneur, as a business owner, and you're thinking about that, you're identifying, wait a minute, I don't feel like that's me yet.
Right.
So a key thing in social and emotional intelligence is learning to value and pay attention to your feelings differently.
Okay.
And so to break that down and to get more valuable data from the word feel, there's some core emotions that all emotions kind of can boil down into, which is fear, hurt, anger, sadness, and joy. One of the first things that people notice when I list these off is, well, I'll ask you, what do you notice? Fear, hurt, anger, sadness, joy. What's one of your first judgments?
There's a lot of bad ones. Negative. There's only one, joy.
Totally. So what I'm offering is a huge reframe of how to look at feelings.
Okay.
Because we all know social and emotional intelligence is important these days. That was kind of my spiel at the beginning. But I think there's a lot more here. What if fear, hurt, anger, and sadness were not bad, were not negative, and
Right.
they were valuable? And this is, I think this is huge. I coach a lot of women in social and emotional intelligence, and I say right up front, look, I understand you're more in touch with your emotions than I am as a guy. It's just, I believe it, but you haven't known that it's a gift. You haven't held, it's actually been an indictment towards you. You
Yeah.
put this stuff down and say, oh, I shouldn't feel afraid. I shouldn't feel hurt. I shouldn't feel angry. Definitely. I don't know, but if we look at it, and we start to flip this around and say, instead of, oh, there's something wrong with me for feeling these things, they're just data that help me identify what I want to address. It's quite empowering.
Yeah.
And of course, so, oh my gosh, I I jumped on a freaking Zoom meeting that's streaming on LinkedIn Live today at noon Central Time. And I just said, I think I'm looking at myself as a business owner instead of a freelancer, and I don't feel like I'm there yet. No kidding. So if we were to break that down into fear, hurt, anger, sadness, joy, when you say I don't feel like I'm there yet, which one of those 5 feelings jumps out the most?
Fear.
Uh-huh. Cool.
Yeah.
Cool. Fun thing about fear is it's felt in the body in the same way that excitement is.
Interesting.
And so, yeah, right? So joy and fear, there's a way that it's like, if I go on a roller coaster, I'm not going to have any fun if there's no part of me that's afraid. I want this, and this ties back to the happiness thing of, if I'm a little outside of my comfort zone, I'm learning and growing.
Right.
Then, that's where I'm happiest. So, okay, so we have fear. Welcome, Joe. So good to see you, man. And so, fear, you have fear about being a business owner. What are your fears about that?
Failure,
Mm-hmm.
not being good enough.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Maybe even being successful, because with success brings more responsibility, and it's like, oh, can I, like, would I be able to pull that off?
Uh-huh.
Yeah, not sure of
Totally.
my own capabilities.
So it'll bring more and you don't know if you can handle it.
Yeah.
Uh-huh. Quick question that will seem like out of left field. Are you by chance the youngest
I'm the
in birth order?
oldest.
How many?
2. they're 10 and 7 years younger than me. So
Oh, so early on, you were an only child though.
I was, yeah, for like 7 years, but I took on a lot of responsibility for my brother and sister when I got older.
Oh, okay. What
Yeah.
was that like?
Uh, yeah.
That says a lot.
I'm like, I don't even know where to begin. Yeah.
So part of what happens then is all of the stuff from childhood. It Alfred Adler says that by the time I think we're 7, we've determined the way that we think the world sees us and what the world expects of us and what we expect of the world. And so anytime I'm stepping out of my comfort zone and I'm growing, I'm going to be coming right up against that limiting belief. Sounds like yours is I'm not enough.
Yeah. Or
And
yeah.
and here's the fun thing with I'm not enough, because there's truth in it. Fact is, you're probably going to fail. Truth is, you're probably not enough. But if you can take those risks and fail forward and challenge yourself and say, oh, you know what? When I made this mistake in my business, I learned from it. I didn't totally crumple. And you know what? In some ways, it wasn't as bad as having to raise 2 kids that I didn't want to raise. And oh my gosh, there's actually some more freedom here. And I can, and the hardest part of this is learning to be graceful with yourself and allowing
Right.
yourself to make more mistakes. And when you're able then to identify, okay, I'm afraid of failing. Well, that's great, because now you can say, what are the things I'm afraid to fail at? And your fear can start to guide you and alert you to things. And you can say, oh, I'm afraid that I won't be successful here, here, and here. Okay, well, who do I need to talk to about that? And so as you're doing this now, jumping back to what you shared at the beginning, you lost a client, but from where I'm sitting, that was much better than taking on a client that you weren't prepared for,
Right.
and unless it was a great learning experience. But you might have also undersold yourself, and you could have leaned into, here's what I do and I do really well. These other things are not in my wheelhouse yet. And so, you know, this is the kind of track record I have. This is the kind of woman I am. And I get, if you can show that you have, you take initiative and ownership of things, and that might be a way that you could say, I would do it at this price, given that this would be a learning opportunity for me.
Mm-hmm.
And you could work on negotiating, instead of what usually happens is you kind of sell people out of hiring you, which is, my hunch is that's what you did.
Yeah.
And so that's where identifying those fears and using it as a gift. And honestly, the other thing is for you to be so good at interviewing your potential clients about what's going on and what their needs are, that in the process of talking to them, that they increasingly trust you more and more. And even if they're like, okay, you're totally not the fit for this, but my goodness, you helped us understand ourselves better,
Okay. Yeah.
they will remember you and they will refer you.
Mm.
So your number one thing with developing yourself as a business owner is trust. and really serving everybody you're talking to at every step of the journey.
That makes a lot of sense.
And how does that feel?
That feels good because I mean, even if I didn't take on a person as a client, but if I was able, like you said, help them understand themselves better, like what they need. And even though I'm not a fit, like I'll find somebody who is a fit, or they might send somebody my way. And it might just turn out like, I don't also want to hire somebody. I mean, work for somebody who isn't a fit for myself either. So that sounds like a good thing to work on, is coming up with a good interviewing process.
Okay, beautiful. And
Yeah,
that's where your fear is really serving you, instead of it being this thing where you're trying to compensate for it, because then you're not really able to make contact with another person. And
right.
for for people interviewing out there, this is a big thing. If I'm just going in to an interview listing off my accomplishments, to some degree that has to happen because people need to know, oh yeah, you have experience with this. But if all I'm doing is just listing off what I'm good at, and if I'm trying to prove myself to you, I'm not really available to have a kind of human to human connection when I'm only in performance mode. And more HR people I'm talking to are recognizing that and saying, you know what, if I'm hiring somebody for a project, I know that if they're just total know-it-alls, I mean, unless they're absolute geniuses, which most of us aren't, if they're just total know-it-alls, it can be such a problem. And I need to know that they know they don't know everything. And I need to know that they're able to hear and take in feedback and really understand another person's problem and what they're working on. I forget her name from who was hiring for Google for years. She put out a great article about this. She said the number one thing she looks for in interviewing is awareness. And so if you can develop that awareness, and it first takes yourself, this is the emotional intelligence part. If I'm not emotionally intelligent, there's no way I can be socially intelligent. I have to have the base, the foundation to understand, what am I feeling right now? And okay, great, that's what I'm feeling. Now I have a foundation. I can check in with other people about what they're feeling. And there can be that's the foundation for development.
Okay.
So Aaron, this is fantastic. I really appreciate your questions here. So between now and next week, if you join in next week or next time that you come in, what's one thing that you're going to do differently?
Well, I know I won't be looking for any potential clients, but I could start looking at different ways on information questions for when I do start looking for potential clients, or even as you're saying, figure out what I'm good at, where I need to fill in my gaps, and what I want to develop too. That might be a good place to start.
Okay. Fantastic. Are you, so currently, how do people find you?
Right now it's just been pretty much word of mouth, because I worked for others, and it's only been like the last couple years, and I only work part-time. And so I have enough work where I haven't really had to go out and find anybody. They've been referred to me. But I'm
Oh, that's great.
thinking, yeah, I'm thinking as I get this like figured out eventually, like I do have a URL, I do want to build myself a website, I do want to start moving in that direction. And so like that's one reason I hopped on today, because I do know I'm looking to grow and everything like that. And so like I figured I'd come check this out.
Oh, cool. Okay. That's beautiful. And I think the overarching framework is, tell me how this lands, but I'm a, um, from perfectionism to learning and growing. So I'm becoming a woman who is increasingly learning and growing and developing deeper relationships with potential clients and current clients, and really enjoying discovering and helping people discover what they're looking for.
Hmm. I like that.
Okay. Okay, cool.
Yeah, I think that's like, I feel like that is something I'd like to grow into.
Okay, fantastic. So, and does that give you more of a sense of, um, does the fear that you have about being a business owner, when you look at it with that frame, does that fear turn more into excitement?
Yes, it does actually. It does.
Okay, beautiful. And then when you're catching those thoughts of I'm not enough, it's great to be able to catch our limiting beliefs, because it can be like, aha, there you are. Instead of it just unconsciously driving us, then there's that like, oh, I'm not enough. And it doesn't have to be, oh, I am enough. It could be, I'm not enough. Of course, I'm one of, are we up to 8 billion people on this planet? You know,
Right.
I'm a, and this is going to be big for the kind of only childness that you do have, is leaning into the, no, I really belong. I'm really a, as Alfred Adler called this, well, his word for it is something that I think is Gemeinschaftengefühl, um, social feeling. Like I really am a part of, I have a place in this world, in the community, and this is the value that I'm bringing. This is how I'm the value that I'm bringing as a woman in this line of work. And that, do you have any feelings when I say that?
I have a lot of feelings when you say that.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, like it's, I don't, so I feel like it, I don't know, I feel like I'm gonna cry.
Uh-huh.
Um, I guess feeling like I belong. It's kind of like hearing that and thinking that it's actually kind of pushing against some of my beliefs of thinking that I'm alone and I have to do everything by myself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that right there, and this is a beautiful thing about emotions, is because when the emotions are open and we're really present, like right now, that's where the rewiring starts to happen.
Okay.
And so it's like, oh my gosh, I've been holding myself as alone and on my own. I had to. That was, where I come from. Where I'm at now is I'm opening up to, I don't have to be perfect. I don't have to get everything right before I belong. In fact, I belong as an imperfect person right now. And I bring a lot of value as I am. And then all of that fear, there's, of course, it's still there, but it can become something that is helping to connect with, oh, what are your fears? Here's my concerns about the project that you're working on. Oh, those are your concerns. Oh, I get that. And so there's that way, and you don't, you, as you said, you belong. It's like, oh my gosh, and that feels really good. And so the hurt and the sadness, there's the sadness for all the years that you felt like you don't belong. And so there's that grieving that's happening. And what a wonderful thing. Because
Yeah.
of course that's sad. Of course it's sad to think that I'm alone and on my own, and to be like, my gosh, there's all these like possible connections and deeper yearnings I could have had met that I didn't. And sadness and grieving that is a really lovely thing. and then the hurt of that. And then the hurt, you can start to pay attention to in a new way of how that can be a way for you to connect and say, you know what, I'm unsatisfied with like where I'm at in my career right now. I feel hurt about it. I know that I'm capable of more. And there's like, and I just feel this kind of hurt about it. And then it doesn't have to turn into, oh, there's something wrong with me. It's just of course, I'm a freaking happening. I'm a person learning and growing. And of course I'm going to have that. Of course there's that pull, that drive. So this is fantastic. I really, really appreciate you and your openness. You're serving so many people.
Well, that makes me feel good.
Yeah, right. Isn't it cool? And then that of like, oh my gosh, I like am tearing up, and that's actually a gift. That's actually having people relate in a way that they probably wouldn't have been able to before.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome, Erin. Thank you. Thank you so much.
It's really helpful.
Beautiful, beautiful. Well, cool. I'm going to do a quick room reset. Thank you again. I want to give you a round of applause and be like, yes, like, and for you to know how many people are benefiting from the work that you just did. So thank you. And part of what I want to get into here is I want to check on some other people's things and to do a room reset. Reminder, this is Career Lab Wednesday. I'm here every Wednesday, noon to 1 p.m. Central Time. My job is to support you in your career wherever you're at. So starting off with interviewing out of college, down the road to where you're at with your purpose. You know, why am I really working? I've, had the family, had the career, I could retire, but like I have an itch for something there. Anything in this kind of realm. And I also, Joe Logan, if you're able to, I'd love a quick check-in. It's wonderful to have you on here anytime that you're able to jump in.
Thanks, George. I appreciate it. Yeah. Aloha, everybody out there. Yeah, things are going very well. It's a little over a year I've been in office, so on this contract, so 4 more years to go. Then we'll see what happens after that. The powers that be, the higher level powers that drew me to this job in the first place. Like you just said, I mean, I retired, and now I'm back to work. I didn't like retirement. It was not for me. I had an itch, I had a calling, and so I tried out, and here I am. But a great organization, great things going. We just had a town hall last night with the community trying to talk about crime. And crime is down in Honolulu as it is across the United States. It doesn't appear that way. Everybody thinks that what you see in the news is happening every day. It's rampant. There are pockets of crime out there, but it's not truly what's going on statistically. That doesn't mean that there's unreported crime too. And so that may be a factor, how much of that we don't actually know. And so we're working towards that. One of the things that as the individual was talking, we think about as a leader, the imposter syndrome is something that happens where you feel you got this job and then they're like, oh, am I really qualified? Am I capable of doing this job? I think I'm in over my head. Maybe this wasn't the right thing for me. And when you have those doubts, then you listen to, what I like to listen to, podcasts, YouTube, go on, listen to TED Talks, and talk to you, George, and find out, what's going on, what's really out there. And then try to help correct, like you just did was wonderful. What you just said and all the things. And I was feeling, the emotion of what you were saying and the individual gathering that emotion and the content of what you said is so important. One of the things I noticed, she said something about, she, I guess, lost a client or didn't gather a client. And did she ask the client why? One question, because they might be able to tell you question. Why. And sometimes they're scared. Sometimes people don't like confrontation, so they don't want to. But you're genuine and honest. You say, hey, sorry, didn't take my business, but, is there anything you do in the future to help? And then and then find out where you were weak at, like you were saying in the interview process, and then study up on that, research, do all the things, and do all the research. Go on social media and find out the individual that you're going to interview. Go look at their Facebook, go look at their Instagram accounts, find out what they're interested in, and use all of that as a tool to when you talk to them, because that'll make that emotional connection.
That's
I had to do that when I interviewed with the police commission. I went through their backgrounds. I looked at all of them. I reviewed. I knew one of them fairly well, but not, I mean, we didn't go to dinner or anything together, but the other ones I had to, I had to know who they were when I went in for my interview for my final, this final tranche of.
Joe, that's fantastic. To circle back like that and to say, hey, as I'm developing as a business owner, I would love feedback about, why you went with somebody else. It would really help me grow. That's fantastic.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And right
Joe.
now I'm having meetings with all my senior leaders, one-on-one meetings, and the word's already gone out and everybody's like, oh, what is the chief going to say? What's he going to ask you? What's the purpose? Why is he doing this? This is unusual. So the gamut is out there. And we just sit down. And I said, this is a conversation you and we've barely met. I wasn't here the last 20 years. Okay, tell me about yourself and why you got here. What brought you to this career in the first place? And then we just have a conversation for an hour and a half. And it's amazing where this thing goes. And I ask them right up front, if you have anything to criticize me constructively, to say, hey, chief, here's where I think you're failing. Here's where I think you're doing well. I'm all open. I have very thick skin. I'm very open. I hold, I appreciate your feedback to me on how I can better myself, because I don't know everything. I have to find the right people here that know everything, that know a lot of stuff about what they're siloed about, and then working and getting the team together to work and open those silos so everybody works together. But it's amazing. It's a lot of, I enjoy coming to work every day.
That's amazing, Joe. I wonder, actually, would you be willing to share with us a little, some best practices for putting, how do I say it? Putting people at ease. I mean, if I'm going into a meeting with you, I know you're a real sweetheart, because, but if I don't know that and I'm walking into a meeting with you, I'm going to be really intimidated. So how do you,
yeah.
how does a leader soften that? What do you do?
Well, one of the initial way is just by your leadership, how you lead by example, how you're out in front, how you behave, how your calm demeanor, how you ease situations. And that's just me. I'm not a screamer. I'm not a yeller. I don't get mad. I mean, I might get upset about something, but that's quiet. It's private. That's between me and a pillow that I can yell into. That's not anything that I take out on anybody. And so I'm very cognizant of that. There have been other people in my position previously that were screamers. And so that's not a way to treat people. And that's something the military taught me as far as leadership. You don't yell and scream at people. You might bark orders, but that's different in a chaotic situation. But in everyday life, that's not how you behave. And so you treat everybody with dignity and respect. And that's the bottom line for me. I treat everybody with dignity and respect. I don't know who you are personally. You may have talked, bad about me behind my back as I applied for this job. I don't care. We start scratch. We start from zero. You and I, you have to make me not like you. And so have at it. But right now, you and I we're leaders together. And how can I help you be the best leader you can? And that's really how I start things off.
That's beautiful, Joe. Really appreciate that. Really appreciate the tip too about if I'm feeling angry, if I need, because part of what I teach is that all emotions are valuable. Yeah. And so there's a place for anger, but as you're saying it is not in those conversations. It is not in the office. It is not at work. And so that I'm going to work through that. I'm going to get clarity from my anger. I'm not going to let it bounce around inside me and tear me up and make me feel guilty, but I'm going to use the aggression that I have in an effective, a constructive way. So
Yeah,
That's-
it's unusual for
really
what we
appreciate
consider
you saying
law enforcement, right? You consider a law enforcement officer as somebody who's command presence and barks orders and makes, timely decisions, and that's true. But once you get up in ranks where you're not engaging the public every day, and the last time I arrested somebody was, a long time ago, and so that behavior is not necessary at this level. And so you just have to change as a person, and it's fun. It's a lot of TED Talks, a lot of using the computer to research and read articles and books on. I'm reading one right now called The Emotional Survivor for Law Enforcement, and it's a very emotional book on how we as law enforcement officers, in that the stress and trauma that we experience over our careers, how do we expel that at the end of the day? How do you release that energy so that you can relax and you can just wind down, decompress, and it's all about relationships and how you live your life with other people. And then how do you retire and enjoy life after this chaos of 20, 30 years is over? And can you handle not doing anything? Because you've been 24/7, 365, right? And so how do you change that wireness in your brain to now decompress and say, oh, and I think that's why when I retired, I wasn't ready. And so I tried it for 10 months, and by the 10th month, I was like, I need to go back to work. And so here we are. But I think the second time I'm ready, and I'll be much better prepared for retirement when it comes.
Okay, Joe, thank you so much for sharing that. Who's the author of that book?
Dr. Gil Martin. He's got several articles, and he's a former police officer, law enforcement, and a psychologist. Amazing individual.
Beautiful. Thank you. I will check his work out. I'm reading My Grandmother's Hands right now, by Resma Menachman, and he worked with the police force in Minneapolis, as well as people returning from Afghanistan. And so I just started digging into this some. So thank you for that tip on Gil Martin and the emotional
Survival for law enforcement. Yeah. Dr. Gil Martin. Yeah. I don't know. His first name is Kevin. Yeah. Kevin Gil Martin. Yeah.
Thank you, Joe.
Yeah, I got to pull up that other book that you talked about. Having been a policeman and in Afghanistan, to me, I could relate to all of that.
Oh, cool. My Grandmother's Hands.
Okay.
Yeah. It's I think you would dig it. Well, fantastic. Oh, yes. Thank you. Diana was asking, and we got that in there. Eric dropped Allison. Okay. I'm going to do a quick room reset. We've got a few minutes left. Joe, thank you again. Aaron, thank you so much for sharing. This is Career Lab Wednesday, every Wednesday, noon to 1 p.m. Central. I've got a question here. I'm currently hitting a point in my career where I am not finding a home in any place of employment. Everything is very short term for me. I'm a high performer with an immense level of drive, and I'm always looking for the next challenge to conquer. I want to prepare to start my own business, but can't get over the hump of fear of risk. Oh, okay. Working for other established companies is safe, but it's a feeling of being stuck. It's a conundrum. Any thoughts? When this question came in, I'm seeing this was from some time ago. I'm hoping that some of the work that Aaron was doing would relate to this. I think there's a lot of overlap with this about the fear of going off on your own, of having your own business, and paying attention to those fears. The fears not being a reason not to do it, but the fears being something to pay attention to, because they're going to give you valuable information. Our fear, the quickest way to say it is, if our ancestors weren't didn't have a good relationship with their fear, if they weren't terrified of stuff, we wouldn't be here. They would have been eaten by saber-toothed tigers. So our fear, there's a really important, there's a function for our fear. And if I am in the habit of blaming myself for fear or thinking that I have to know everything before I can do something, it's sort of like let me go into a cave and get everything absolutely perfect before I ever let myself go engage. Well, by the time I did that in today's world, the world would have moved on and whatever I learned wouldn't be applicable anymore. So there's a way of leaning into fear moment by moment and really having it guide. So I hope that helps with answering that question. There's what I would recommend is you could make a list of the fears. So instead of it just being a big old I'm afraid, make a list of each of the things that you're afraid about in starting your own business, and then see what you can do to address those fears. And keep in mind that sometimes it's going to be talking to another person. I make this mistake a lot myself of thinking that once I handle this one challenging project, then I'll allow myself a phone call to like talk something through. It's like, no, do it the other way. We, as human beings, most of us think better in relation. And there are certainly times where we need the deep thought, especially writers, artist types, probably mathematicians. If you're working on something really complex and a big idea, you have to let yourself be able to sink down and be with all kinds of complexities and let your unconscious mind reveal things to you. That is a valuable skill to learn as well. But everybody needs the other one of being able to verbalize things and talk things out loud. And you'll find that will help you solve a lot of your own problems. Honestly, as a coach in sessions, especially once I get going with somebody, sometimes I don't say much. Sometimes I just sit there and I'm just really listening to somebody as they are solving their problems. And just that space of having another person attentively listening does wonders. If you're Christian, the somewhere in the Bible it says something about like wherever two or more of us meet, there's Jesus or there's the church or something. I think it's kind of like that. Like if we're really connecting, then all kinds of cool stuff can happen. And I remember one session where I literally did not say a word for 50 minutes. And the person was like, this is one of the best coaching sessions I've had. So it never underestimate when you are a business owner, if you are going out and taking risks of you could create a list of people that you can call and think out loud with. And the people will actually benefit from that. It will help other people to hear you really thinking things through. That's a gift that some people are willing to give in your network. And I have one wonderful friend who I just, I finally just accepted the fact that he likes me and he likes hearing me talk and he likes being there for me. So I call him. It took me a while, but so that you might keep that in mind as you're going on your business. Is there we've got another few minutes for that question. If you want to, you're welcome to come off mute and we can check in a little bit more here. You're welcome to come off mute and talk here.
Hi everyone. Yeah, I'm still here.
Okay, great. So how is were we addressing your question at all?
Yeah, it's something that I've been working through for a couple years now. I think there's always the I guess some context. I am a first generation immigrant, so there's always this kind of survival mode that I'm constantly always tapping into, right?
Yeah.
And security is always at the front of that line, right? So when I'm talking about risk, it's always, how is this going to be risk adverse to my ability to still maintain security financially, also being the breadwinner. It's like, can I take that leap and be able to take the hit? I don't have generational wealth, again, being first generation. So there's a really thick layer of, I think, a lot of complexities that play into my risk thinking that generate more fear. So I think some of the thoughts you have, like thought mapping on creating a list of what are really my fears, because right now I think it's a very ambiguous thought that I have around I know it's security, but I couldn't tell you like to pinpoint exactly, create a list like on the fly of, what are my biggest concerns, right? But I know I have the ability to achieve that. There's people who come here from other parts of the world who don't speak the language and start a business here in America, and they're successful and they thrive. And being here already, being born and raised, having education, understanding the American system, understanding corporate America, I kind of have the leg up to have that infrastructure to make all these things happen. But I think it does start with like a belief in myself to truly believe that I can achieve it.
Yeah. But you have, this is a deeper thing. I'm so happy to hear that you're conscious of it. Being for first generation, that is another layer of complexity. There's expectations on you.
Yes.
And then for you to be able to thrive, there's an independence and a you really knowing you're doing it for you that is exceptionally hard from where you're coming from. It's different. This might be a little bit of a jump, but if I so have World War II on my mind from watching Oppenheimer last night. But if I'm a Jewish scientist fleeing Germany, or a Jewish anybody fleeing Germany, and I get over to the United States, and here's this land of opportunity, and it's just like I can just go nuts on creating financial wealth and security, and I can do all this kind of thing, especially because it's like, how else am I going to deal with the horrors of what's happening? Like I'm just grateful to just drive at something. Well, so a lot of that happened, but then there's the next generation and the kids now who are like, hey, mom and dad, like, I just want your love and affection. And I don't care that like we have 5 properties, like, would you spend some time with me, please? And be interested in me and so there's ways that these breakdowns happen generationally. And so just when you said that's where my brain went. I just started talking. So maybe there's something useful in there. If so, take it. If not, leave it.
Absolutely. No, I think you have a good synopsis of those scenarios, because it does. I'm not saying it waters down, but you get the drive that your parents have migrating here, right? There's like this push to outperform at a constant level. So if I could say that I perform at an optimal level pretty much anywhere I go, because there's always something to prove.
Yeah.
But then you bring it back to yourself and you don't have that same almost obligation to prove it to yourself, because you know what I mean? It's like the money comes from someplace else and you can see it directly, but to see it in yourself when there isn't like an immediate financial gain, it's hard to stay motivated to want to push for that.
Yeah. Okay. Well, cool. Well, thank you for sharing that.
Of course.
I do need to wrap up here. I got a session coming in, but I'm so grateful to everybody who joined in and shared today. Really good stuff. Really appreciate you. This is available every Wednesday. Also, yes, thank you, Jane. You can book a 15-minute free session with me if there's stuff that you want to get into that you don't want to share live. And we can sort, if continued coaching is a good thing. Also, there's an app that we're in development. And if you have an Android, you can download it and you can test it. There's videos and worksheets and tools in the app. So click on that. Thank you, Jane. That document will show you how to download it and get it, start using it, especially once you have come here to Career Lab and you get a little bit of this context. I think you'll be able to look at the app and say, oh, okay, cool. I can really use this and the things in here throughout the week in a way that's going to help me continue developing. So take a look at that if you got an Android. Sorry if you don't. It's just, the nature of the development world. All right, I got to run. Thank you, everybody. Blessings. See you next week.